There's no question about it. There's more, and we call it getting awake or whatever.
Hmm.
And my wish is, even so, they're awake to a lot of things, but they're not totally awake to the things that we've been talking about here today.
Yeah. I love solving new problems and I love learning new things, especially of problems that are complicated and have been solved. What I don't like to learn about is problems that have been solved, but nobody's going to do anything about. Today is kind of that type of situation, and I think this is probably going to be the most valuable hour and a half you are ever going to have in your life. You're going to find this very informative. But take a deep breath. If you're unfamiliar with this topic, there's a lot to take in. Greg, we're going to talk about the Fed. I'm going to assume that a lot of people don't know what this is. I'm going to go back to my 20s before you start and
Okay.
say this is the first time I ever heard of the Fed. I had no idea what it was. So I was mid to early 20s. I was waiting tables and I was driving to work, and there was a guy who had a bumper sticker. It said 86 the Fed. 86, I knew what that meant because I worked in the restaurants. It means take it off the menu.
Right.
So let's start very
It can
mundane
mean
with.
something more severe than that, but okay.
Okay, well, typically, what my introduction, all right, so maybe it just means removing it. My understanding at the time was we're taking it off the menu. We're getting rid of it,
It can also
or
mean
we're out of
like
it.
a hit.
A hit.
So,
Explain.
or whatever that's worth.
86 is a hit. Oh, like
Absolutely.
for a
To get
person
86 is to be taken
to
out.
take them out. Okay, well, to
Yeah,
take out, yeah. So it's kind of like that, but originally it was is kind of like meaning
probably was. Yeah.
it's here part of our list of things and we're out of it, or we're taking it off because we're no longer selling it or something like that. That's my understanding of it. But I kind of scratch my head and go, what is the Fed, and who is so adamantly opposed to it that they're driving with it on their bumper sticker, and who made the bumper sticker? Just start really. I obviously I'm in my 50s now, so I understand a bit of it, but you understand it at a deeper level. Let's just kind of start with the very basics, and when you start getting too
Sure.
technical and over the
Yeah, I'll try
over,
not to.
no, that's okay. I'll just kind of bring it back down if we can. So,
Okay.
you had stated that you believe that the Fed is the source of all America's problems,
I
and
do.
I would just explain what the Fed is, and who started it, when was it started, and I
Sure.
guess go from there.
Okay. The Federal Reserve System, which is sometimes known as the Fed, was founded in 1913. It was a piece of legislation in 1913, which was just after Woodrow Wilson was elected, that that we basically gave a national bank status to this organization. It was couched as, at the time, they were worried about runs on banks. And
Explain
this was,
that.
yep. And so in
No,
1907, there
explain
was
runs
something,
on banks. Yeah.
well, a run on a bank, well, just means that the bank runs out of money, and everybody gets, nervous when they think the bank's going to run out of money. And, we've all seen It's a Wonderful Life, where, isn't that the
Yeah.
one where he runs out of money?
Yeah.
And then suddenly everybody says, well, I guess I don't need to take it all out now. Anyway, the bank never has as much money as there are deposits that need to be paid. But hopefully it's a confidence game. If everybody is happy with that, it
We got to
continues to work.
start more basic than that. All right, you kind of jumped ahead of me. All
Well,
right, so the run
yeah.
on the bank is when the banks run on money. How do they run on money in the first place?
Well, because there's more debt than there is money to pay it by definition. And that's one of the things I'm going to be talking
All right,
about.
give me an example before I move on. Give me an example of that.
Well, okay, let's start with this simple fact. Debt money is loaned into existence. So if money is loaned into existence and there's interest of any kind, doesn't matter if it's 1% or 20%, it makes no difference. There's always, as time progresses, there's going to be more owed back because money was loaned into existence. The same
I don't
amount of money
understand
is
that loaned into
still
existence.
circulating, but
I'm
more money
sorry.
is
We
owed
got to
back.
start way back. I don't understand what loaned into existence means.
So when you get a car loan, or
Yeah.
when you get a loan against your house, or
Yeah.
when you get a loan of any kind, a personal loan from a bank, a commercial bank, they are not giving you somebody else's deposits. They kind of are in a sneaky sort of way, but at least a part of what they're loaning out is new money. It's money that didn't exist. When you're using a credit card, you're not using money that existed before. It's literally coming into existence at that point. So
That's when it gets confusing for me.
Yeah.
I just don't understand the concept. And I think when you've explained this to other people, you say they care or that they agree that it's as bad, but they don't
Yes.
care. I think they don't care because
Well,
they don't
what
understand
they
it.
don't care because they
So,
don't know what to do about it, and
well, I
that's
think they don't understand it. I think,
partly,
yeah. So
partly
I can't get my head around it because I don't understand the concept of being loaned into existence. And
right.
even when you said it, it still doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, well let's do it this way. Let's think of money like a movie ticket.
Okay.
Okay, so if you go to a theater and you get some tickets for the show or a sports game, anything like that, and then you take that ticket and it can be redeemed at the point that you go to see the show.
Right.
Okay, you could give it to somebody else and they could pay you, they could give you some other goods and service in exchange for that, and that would sort of be like money. So then, as long as everybody said, "Hey, I believe in the full faith and credit of this movie ticket, and I know eventually I can redeem it," then I'm okay with accepting that in payment for other things. And so it can literally circulate as money. And so, the money that we know of today isn't the only thing that's been used as money. Typically, it's been gold and silver, but it's been other things too, clamshells or all sorts of other crazy things. The point is, as long as as long as it functions as money, then it is money. Money is just what we decide it is. It's a man-made thing. So does that make sense? It's something that we've agreed upon that it can circulate. So
Yes,
getting back to
I
the movie,
understand that. Yeah.
giving back to the movie ticket, the movie theater issues these tickets and promises to repay them at a later date when you redeem them for the show.
Got
Okay.
it.
So, but what would happen if, for example, I loaned money and you had to pay back when you came to the show. You not only had to give me the ticket that you had, but you had to give me a little extra, somebody else's, part of somebody else's ticket too, in order to pay it back. Well, if that were the case, there wouldn't be enough tickets for everybody to see the show.
Oh, I
Does
say
that
that
make
again.
sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I start getting
Okay,
it.
so when
There
you come
wouldn't be
back,
enough.
when you
Yeah.
redeem your ticket, if enough time has passed, let's suppose you had to pay interest. So you not only had to have the ticket that you originally bought, but you also had a little bit extra. Doesn't matter how much, just any amount extra. And then if everybody did that, everybody redeemed at the same time, there would not be enough movie tickets for not everybody could redeem their movie tickets because there'd be more owed back than there were issued in the first
All
place.
right,
Does that make sense?
yeah, well, maybe let me reply it back. All right, so I go to
Okay.
the movie theater. They have they have unlimited tickets anyway, but they have
Sure.
it probably tied to the computer of how many seats are in the thing. So
Right.
I go in before the movie starts. Somebody comes along and says, "Okay, now you gave it extra $5 for that ticket," and I
Mhm.
do that. Why would that affect the number of tickets?
I'm not saying $5. I'm saying
Let's
extra
just say a little bit.
tickets. I'm saying extra tickets. You have to pay. So the ticket is the only money. So you have to pay not only the ticket you bought, but you have to buy somebody else's part of somebody else's
Ah,
ticket.
so I got to buy somebody a part of somebody else's ticket. Why do I got to
Yes,
do that?
because that's the only thing they'll accept. They won't, you can't redeem anything else except movie tickets.
All right, so I go in the movie theater. I'm told that I get a ticket
Uh-huh.
and that this will give me a movie. But when I
Right.
get in there, I
Yeah.
have
Well, you
to.
you knew ahead of time that you're going to have to buy a little bit of somebody else's movie ticket.
All
And
right,
you're like,
let's
that's
all right.
okay.
Instead of thinking fractional movie tickets, let's just say it costs 5 tickets
Okay.
to get in the movie.
And
I gotta buy
they issue you five, but you got to bring back six
bring back when
when
at
you
the
redeem
door
it.
when I go into the movie. I don't
Yep,
redeem them.
that's the interest.
All
That's the
right, so
that,
as
that's
I'm
that's
walking
that's the
into,
price you have to pay for my being so nice to giving
all
you
right,
this money.
I got it. So I get it at the ticket booth. I get 5 tickets, and then
Hmm.
I got something between. I get there between there and the door. I have to go and buy somebody else's a ticket for somebody else.
Yes.
All
Yep.
right, and then how does that person
And
then get the extra ticket? Then they're
that's
down
the
one
problem.
ticket.
There's never enough tickets for everybody to be able to redeem and see the show. That is the
And
fundamental problem.
this started with money, or this started with in 1913.
It started long before 1913. It
All
was
right.
formalized in the United States with 1913, but it's been around for a
Formalized
long, long
and
time.
what with that policy under
Yes.
Woodrow Wilson. Okay, now where did this start? This
It
whole
starts a
ticket
long,
game,
long time ago. It starts in the
thousands of
Roman
years
Empire.
ago.
Yeah.
All right.
Literally it's the Babylonian money system. So it literally
Wow.
goes back
Okay.
to Babylon. And but a good illustration, if I could go to the Middle Ages,
Yeah.
it really found. It's been around in various forms since
Hmm.
forever, but it
Hmm.
really found a holding, if you will, in the Middle Ages. And what really made the difference was the world got smaller with the people being able to trying to find a faster way to get to India and things like that, and then
Yeah.
finding the colonies and finding all the new world and all this exploration. What happened as a result of that, people would want to transfer their wealth. They would, let's say, they would buy some goods, some spices from India, something really expensive, and then have a whole shipload come back. They would have to have the money to pay for it when they got to India. They didn't want to lug all this physical gold there. So what they did, they were smart. They had somebody in India who would accept the paper contract from some quote unquote bank in Europe, in Italy, or someplace
This
like
is the
that.
Middle Ages, you say?
Yes, and
Okay.
this was taking place, and it did facilitate trade. I'm not saying it didn't have good things.
Right.
With every bad thing, there's maybe a whole ton of good. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that idea is bad in and of itself. That's good, but it allowed paper money to flourish because again, lugging physical gold and physical silver all over the world was just a hassle, and you had to worry about pirates and all that kind of stuff. It just made sense to have certificates and contracts, paper money, which they didn't call it that quite in the same way that we think of it in a modern way, but it functioned in the same way. Does that
All
make
right.
sense?
Quick. Yeah, it does. Really quick, because I know this is going to be the heart of the matter with the movie ticket sales. What you're saying is inevitably there's not enough tickets, and therefore somebody is not going to be able to enter the movie. Somebody is not
Yes.
going to get some of the benefit,
Right.
right?
That's what a run
So
on bank. You asked what is a run on the
run on
bank, and
banks.
that was
Okay,
my
so,
answer
so
to
run
that
on
question.
bank is where they run on tickets. Now,
Yep.
when they had gold and did trading with that, without the tickets, without the coupon, so to speak, how did they
Well,
do
well,
this then?
let me get. I haven't gotten to the heart of it yet.
Got it.
Okay, so
Okay.
suppose you are a gold dealer or a goldsmith. You own lots of gold, and people
Okay.
come to you to store their gold, and they find it convenient because you're issuing these certificates. They find it convenient to say, "Hey, the certificate's as good as gold." That was
Yeah.
the expression that was been used for a long time, and so you have a reputation of being, you're gonna store their gold. They're gonna issue you certificates. Okay, well, if as long as the amount of certificates that are circulating around equals the amount of gold that's in the vault, there's no problem.
Right.
Okay, everything's great, and they can
Okay.
even charge you a small fee for storing the gold. But
Okay.
you think that's what they did?
Let me guess. No.
Can you guess what they really did?
What did
It's
they
not that
really
hard
do?
to, not that tough of a leap. Really?
You want me to guess what
I
they
want you to
did
guess, what did
in
the
order?
goldsmith do? Say, hey, I'm issuing
They
these
took
gold
some of the gold
certificates.
out
I
and put
got
it
all this
somewhere
gold.
else.
Nobody knows how much I got.
They
But
took the gold for themselves.
well, no, they didn't.
Okay,
No,
what
that's
did they
not
do?
it. They
No
issued
idea.
additional certificates. So in other words, they didn't at that time they didn't say this is Harry's gold and this is Fred's gold and this is John's gold. They just said I got this much gold. I got 1 ton of gold, but I'm going to issue 2 tons of receipts, and nobody's going to know because they're never all going to come at the same time wanting you know me to redeem all this gold. If they did, then that'd be found out, and that did happen a few times, and that was a run on the bank or a run on the gold or whatever. That
All right,
kind of thing
question.
did happen.
Yeah.
But
So,
basically, yeah,
what
they
time period
they
are we talking
they
when they
did
were?
that because they could get interest on these certificates, right? Which they later became called money. But the more they issued, the more they could make, and so they became. Plus, they were issuing out the principal. They weren't spending it into existence. They were loaning it into existence, and that's the trick, if you
All
will.
right,
And
they
they were making
loaned the
money on the
money,
interest.
the paper, the tickets they loaned the
Hmm.
tickets into interest, but the
Hmm.
gold. I mean, this is before we went off the gold standard. So I want to go back to that.
But even with the gold
Yeah.
standard, you still run into this problem because there could always be more money than there is gold to back it up. How do you know? You have to be able to trust these people, and
Right.
trust and government have never been two things that have gone together very well. Mark Twain said, and he died in 1910 before the Federal Reserve. He said something about the slimiest group of people on earth is the United States Congress and the United States Senate. So they were pretty corrupt even back then. So for whatever that's worth, that's what we're trusting our gold with and our money with. And unfortunately, 1913 made things much worse, but we'll get into the details. But I wanted to get into one thing that we talked about run-ins on the bank, and that just brings up another idea that it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I want to cover it because it's important.
Mhm.
And that is, if you were a goldsmith and you were worried about a run on your bank, you might decide to cooperate with some other goldsmiths who were
Okay.
doing the same kind of thing. And that way, if there was a run on your bank, then they would cover you. And if there was a run on their bank, you'd cover them. And so the whole system would continue on. That kind of stuff definitely was going on in the Middle Ages. Does that make sense?
Yes, that was going on in the Middle Ages. All right, we
Yes.
jump back in time again.
And now
Let's,
I want to
yeah.
define the word conspiracy at this point.
Okay.
A conspiracy is basically people plotting. Well, the definition I'm looking right at it is plotting or scheming. It's sedition or treason. It has a negative connotation, but it doesn't really have to. It really bothers me. Like Steve Bannon says, there's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences. I'm here to say there's tons of conspiracy. Conspiracies are all over the place, and they're they don't always have to be bad. They can be more like a confederacy. It's people working together for a common cause. And a lot of times they have a secret. I mean, secrets, which every corporation on the planet has a conspiracy, if by that definition, is people working together for a common cause, and they've got secrets that they're not telling everybody.
Right. I want to break that down too. So the word
Right.
conspire means you aspire with someone. So conspire, that it just means you want to do something and you want to do it
Right.
with somebody else. That's all conspiracy is.
Right.
Now,
So when
it's
people
taken
say
bad
there's no
connotations in
conspiracies-
recent years. They've taken it in bad connotation in recent years because of the theories. They went in different directions.
Right.
So conspiracy, people often are saying, I'm not into conspiracies. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Conspiracy theories. Okay, so
Right.
it's you speculate about certain
Right.
conspiracies.
And I don't
that
do
you
that.
aren't involved
I'm
with.
telling you, I'm talking about the Federal Reserve and how it works and everything.
They
I say
literally got together and conspired to do this,
can be
for better or
proven.
worse.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. I mean, that's a conspiracy as far as
It's
I
a
see it. I mean, I
historical
think of like
fact.
the mafia. What is the mafia? It's the same thing. It's some two-bit hoodlum, starts taking advantage of people in some way, and then he says, well, I want to get hooked up with this other two-bit hoodlum,
Right.
and we'll conspire together to, and the more organized they get, the more they can control. And really that's what the mafia is. It's just organized crime. That's organized conspiracy by definition.
Right.
I mean, if
Now,
it wasn't
people have
organized, it wouldn't be a
lost sight
conspiracy.
of people have lost sight of this word over the years. It's out of control.
Yeah.
So
So
hopefully it
anyway,
gets brought
by
back.
definition, the mafia is organized crime,
Yes. which
which is a conspiracy.
That's right.
What it. That
So
it
is a
can't be anything
gang.
else.
So is so is everything.
So yeah. So Jeff, you noted earlier that you don't know much about the Fed or how money works, and you're not alone. That's not an accident. We should be taught this stuff in grade school. It's not that hard, but unfortunately, we're not. I think there's a reason for it, and the people that are actually controlling all this. Now, put yourself back in the hands of these goldsmiths. You're doing something that could be found out and could be real disastrous. It could cause a run on the bank.
We're in the Middle
if you were
Ages right
found
now.
out. Right. So you
Okay.
are conspiring with others so that doesn't happen. You don't want your secret of that you got a ton of gold, but you've got 2 tons of receipts out there. You don't want people to know this secret, right?
Right.
So you're conspiring with others who know what you're doing. And it's a small group of people. And the smaller the group of the people, the better, because then it's easier to control the conspiracy, as it were.
Makes sense.
And that has been going on since the Middle Ages. It's
With
changed
who?
form in many
With who?
ways. Huh?
With whom? So
Well, okay.
yeah. So
it really
let's
stepped
just go
up.
back
So,
to 500.
well, I want to point out a special year, which is 1694,
All right.
which is that was the year that England started to take. I mean, I don't want to say that kings and queens were not borrowing money from people before. They certainly were,
Mhm.
but it wasn't done on a federal national level like it was starting in 1694 with the Bank of
Why do
England,
kings
which
and
was
queens need
established
to borrow money?
for who. Yeah, that's just the point. And I've
All
said
right.
this before. If the U.S. government is in debt, or I'm sorry, let me say that the other way. If the U.S. government is printing all the money it can stand, why is it in debt? By
Right.
definition, it's not printing money. It's not coining money. It's borrowing money into existence. It's borrowing money and then somebody's lending it to them. Who is this somebody? It's clearly not itself because it wouldn't be in debt if it was if that was the case. So it just drives me bananas when I keep hearing saying the government is printing too much money. You don't understand the first thing about money if that's what if you're saying that. I'm sorry, that is not how it works. But
All
anyway, I
right, but
hear
you're
that
gonna break it
all the
down.
time.
1694 England.
Yep, yep. The Bank of England was formed, and the English crown decided that borrowing money into the government was a good idea. Was that Queen Anne, I guess, at that time? She was
I
an
don't
idiot
know.
because she had the sovereignty to do it herself, but she chose to have it loaned to the government from someone
Yeah,
else.
so that's when it seems like that
Crazy.
doesn't make any sense. All right,
It
okay.
makes no sense. Anybody
All
with
right.
a would say, why would she do that?
She
Well,
was
she
talked
didn't know
into it
any
then.
better.
Yeah,
She
she
didn't
was
know any
talked
better, and
into it.
neither
Some
did we
people
in
persuaded
1913.
her. All right,
Sorry,
some people
I keep talking over you.
yeah, that's what, I'm just saying somebody must have persuaded her. She must have been naive some way or another.
She
Somebody
got
got the
sold.
yeah, she did. Okay.
I will say this in
Windows.
our own history, Andrew Jackson saw through it, and we had a federal bank, the first bank of the United States, founded in 1794, with the great, with the pushing of Alexander Hamilton. Good guy in a lot of ways, but not in this way, in my opinion. Then we had a second Bank of the United States. In my opinion, that's what the War of 1812 was all about, was trying to make sure that got established. We did establish the second 20 years of the Bank of the United States in, was it 1816 or something like that. And so it had another 20-year tenure. And then Andrew Jackson is the one that finally put a stop to it. And that's why, even though there's a lot of bad things that could be said about Andrew Jackson, he is literally one of my favorite presidents. He
All
is
right,
the
I do
only
want to talk a little
president
bit about
that fought the
yeah.
banks and won.
All right, I do want to talk
It's a
about
big
Andrew
deal
Jackson a little bit. So I know I'm learning a lot about him as I'm here in Tallahassee area because, well,
because
he
of the
set up the
Indians. And
the Indians, but also
yep,
he set up the I think he was the first tentative governor. They had a name for it, but he wasn't the governor. But
yep.
so he was yeah, he did some
He was
not
not a
cool
perfect
things
person.
with the chief of the Seminoles. So I
I
read it. I
admit
was
that.
like, okay, that is messed up what he did.
He's responsible for the Trail of Tears. I admit that. He
Okay.
was corrupt himself. I
All
admit
right.
all of that.
All
But
right, but Andrew
he's still
Jackson
one of my
had
favorites because he did what I care about most. He
right.
fought
I
the
understand
banks and
that.
he won.
All right,
And I care about and that had some really good
all
consequences.
right. So let's
Abraham
see.
Lincoln also did. Abraham Lincoln issued money directly by the government. We talked about why didn't Queen Anne just have the government issue money? Abraham Lincoln did do that. They called it greenbacks. But they had their own version of fake news back then. And they owned all the newspapers back then. And they were, constantly saying how bad the greenbacks were. And eventually, after 40 years of circulation with no inflation, they were taken out of circulation, but they were good money. They were issued by the government with no interest. That's what matters.
I want to understand a little bit about the what the times were like when Andrew Jackson came in and broke that up. What was happening? Who was involved? Of what Andrew
Well,
Jackson did to the money system.
okay. I mean,
What was going
I need
on?
to back up a little bit and
Yeah.
say, the Napoleon in the War of 1812 and Napoleon and all of that,
Uh-huh.
that is, there's a famous episode when I think it was Nathan Rothschild, the Rothschild family had each of them, one went to England, one went to France, one went to Germany.
Yes, I have
They went
seen
all
that.
over the place. And I
Uh-huh.
think it was Nathan that was in England. I may have that wrong. But anyway,
So
and
many
then
of
he
them.
famously, he knew what was going on. And at the Battle of Waterloo, which is
What do you mean
1815,
he knew what was going on? What was going on?
he knew he had spies of his own that he
Yeah.
paid for,
Okay.
and he knew who was going to win that battle. And he came
Okay.
and he pretended that he had, that Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo, and he was just acting all dejected. And secretly, he was going in buying all the stocks, and he literally bought the currency of the Bank of England
Hmm.
in 1815. I mean, that's because of that sham that he put on everybody. is famous for that. And
Do
so
you think
the
that was just
Rothschilds
maybe a
gained a
good
lot of
bet?
power
Like
at that
he
point.
saw that, Napoleon, maybe he just had a good bet.
Well, whatever. The
All
bottom
right.
line
So,
is
all right, so
it's well
he
known
knew
that
the
he
outcome. He
he
looked at
he
it and
came
said,
into
okay.
the floor, the stock exchange floor, acting all dejected, and then secretly he was buying up all the shares of stuff that people were dumping because they thought that Napoleon was going to sweep
I got it.
through
So there
England.
was a sleight of hand. Okay, got it. Okay,
Oh
makes
yeah,
sense.
that's a
Yeah.
that's a well-known thing.
Okay.
Anyway, my point is the Rothschilds
I didn't know
were,
that.
I think they were definitely involved in the War of 1812, and
Okay.
they had a hand in making that all happen. That was what the war was really all about. And don't forget, Andrew Jackson was, I think, probably more than any one other individual responsible for the United States winning the War of 1812 in the Battle of New Orleans. So he defeated the British at that point, and he had Indians. Some Indians were fighting with him. Most of them were fighting against him, which is part of the reason why he hated Indians so much. And it was a different time,
Yeah, I
and
understand.
I
I
I don't
understand.
forgive a lot of the things that he did, but like I said, he did what I care about, and he was an SOB like Trump. I'm
I
sorry
understand.
to say that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there's a
but
lot. All
getting
right.
back
So,
to now in 1830s, when they were trying to renew the charter for the bank, he was going to fight them. The main proponent on the Rothschild side was Nicholas Biddle, was his name, and it wasn't just like one guy. I mean, they had the press going, they had all this fake news going, just like we have today, trying to talk, why we needed a national bank and why it was so good. And Andrew Jackson, he was a populist, kind of like today,
hmm
and he had the support of the people. I think most of the people still, even then, didn't really quite understand what what was so bad about a bank, and what was good about it. They were those that wanted the bank were saying, well, the bank will give us stability and we won't have to worry about runs on banks, and we need this and blah blah blah. And he was saying, no, we don't need this. And we got along without a national bank from 1835 or 1836, whenever that was, until 1913. They tried to institute one with Lincoln. I think he was shot for that, but he resisted it. I mean, they've been at this for a long, long time. So 1913 was the culmination of a lot of their plans.
All
So,
right.
but even before 1913, there were still runs on bank. There were still people loaning out more money than they had to cover it. So it's a
So
there
I
is a
want to go back. I
solution.
was asking before, but it never got a touch on. So I want
Okay,
to understand the
sorry.
climate right before Andrew Jackson stepped in. What was the climate like? Who had the money? What year was it? I'm kind of trying to look on here.
Well, Andrew Jackson he won the popular vote in 1824, but
Okay,
lost
it
the
lost the
electoral
electorate
vote to John Quincy Adams
until the next 4 years came by.
in 1824. Then in 1828 he won again,
hmm
and then in 1832 he won again. So
hmm
he was very popular, and he was he was a he was an SOB. He really was. He's like didn't take crap from people, and he
Yeah,
had he had a lot of enemies. So
yeah.
I don't know. John Quincy Adams, I think, just he wanted to sort of continue things as his father had done. I don't think he had a strong view about the bank one way or the other. The bank hadn't become an issue yet in 1828 because it wasn't going to renew until 1835 or 1836.
hmm
So, it was on a 20-year deal. Every 20 years they were supposed to just wave it through. And Andrew Jackson said, "No, I'm not waving it through."
All
So,
right. Oh, you're saying it and that, but I'm not
it
following.
being the
All right.
national bank, sorry,
All
the
right,
national
so
bank.
I'm just not following. I'm sorry. I'm trying, and maybe I
Okay.
need more coffee.
Okay.
All right, so
You were
Andrew
asking,
Jackson. I'm
is there
trying
a
to
national
understand the
bank?
climate. Now, I want to go. I got to get in my head.
Sorry.
What was the world like? What was going on? Who had the money before Andrew Jackson came into the presidency? Who had the
Who
money?
had
What
the
was
money?
going on? You said he put a stop to it, but I want to know what he put a stop to. Was it the
I
National
see.
Bank at that moment?
Well, let's go back.
Yeah.
The Revolutionary War and the War of 1812 cost a lot of money.
Okay.
War is a
Now
fantastic
I'm
way to
starting to
get
see.
people
All right.
into debt.
Yes.
And so we started off in 1792. We were in debt, and that's why
Who
the
were you in
idea
debt to?
in debt
France.
to the various, the European banks,
Okay.
and so it was like, well, we need a national bank because we don't want to have, if the states, the idea at that point, the issue wasn't should
Okay.
we have a bank or shouldn't we have a bank? The
Now I'm
idea
starting
was,
to follow.
should it be a
Okay.
federal bank or should it be states banks?
All
And
right.
Alexander Hamilton made a strong case that we need something federal. We need something that's central that would, coin the money for us. And by the way, the Constitution does provide the Congress has the authority to coin money.
Right.
And right away, they gave that authority away to
All right.
these
Who did
banks
that? Why did they do that?
because they didn't know any better.
Who did
And
it?
Alexander Hamilton
Was it
had
like
a
the
really
Queen
good
where they
pitch.
talked into it again?
Basically, because even though I think I would say the average, congressman and senator in 1792
Mm-hmm.
had a better understanding of money than the average senator or congressman today. I would say that's true, but they
Okay.
still didn't really totally get it. They didn't understand that they literally had the sovereignty and the authority. Well, first of all, you had to get other nations to accept the fact that the money that you're issuing as a sovereign, they'll accept that. Okay, so that wasn't necessarily the case with this brand new nation. You see what I'm saying? So they
Yeah.
had to borrow it from somebody who would be accepted. So
Who?
the money
Who
from
was
the
that?
Bank of England and the money from the Bank of France,
Bank of
those
England.
monies were acceptable to these other nations. And
Got
by
it.
the way, they were controlled by the Rothschilds
Got
and
it.
other family banks. This fledgling United States, who are we to come out and say we're sovereign and we're going to issue our own money? Well, the big dogs weren't even doing that. So we couldn't very well do that. And so
Got it.
it was an uphill battle, even in 1792.
Okay. Makes
And
sense.
it just, we had so many other fish to fry, so many other problems. It was just, I don't know. I don't want to say it was the wrong thing to establish a federal bank. The issue wasn't really, should we have a bank or shouldn't we? The issue was, should we have a state banks or should we have a federal bank? You know what I'm saying? And I'm
Yeah.
saying we shouldn't have a bank at all. There's other solutions, but
Maybe in that time there wasn't though.
at that time, like I said, it wasn't really the issue. So we started the first Bank of the United States, and then there were people that were clamoring that, hey, let's get out of this. Let's be sovereign. Let's issue our own currency.
Mhm,
Let's
mhm.
not do this because we're the United
And
States.
that makes sense.
And then I believe the War of 1812 was about that. That's the, under wraps, we don't, that's the story behind the story, but it's a big part of what actually happened.
I understand.
And like I said, Andrew Jackson was a part of that war. He saw firsthand, what these people were willing to do. And the other thing that we learned from these wars is that war is it is the best way to get people into debt. And if you are a banker and you want people, what do you want? You want people, as many debtors as possible. The more, the better. And so this is a good way to get people into debt. So every 20 years, just have another war. That's kind of what they wanted. And they almost got it. But Andrew Jackson, he fought them. It was not an easy fight. Let's put it that
All
way.
right, good. So, all right, so these bankers or debtors, the powers that be, let's just say, where they're more powerful than the governments, where the governments need to go to them, or at least believe they need to go to them, just like the Queen of England
Yep.
in 1694 was talked into it. She
Right.
could have done this herself,
Right.
didn't need to do it. The United States could have done it themselves. If they really were sovereign, they would have done it for themselves. So they obviously didn't feel that
Right.
that
And we could do
independent.
it ourselves right now.
We could. Okay, so we'll get to that because that's what I'm most interested. But I want to understand really the where the
Well,
roots set
you
in.
understand. I mean, it is the same thing as, loaning money into existence. That is the fundamental evil. It's like I
I
said, with
think
the
I
movie
understand that. I don't
You-
have it in my subconscious that I can act on it, but
Okay,
I'm starting to
but you
understand
do
it.
understand that there will always be more debt than there is money to pay it
Yes, I understand that
by the very
now.
fact that you loaned it into existence. And that is the secret. That is the ultimate, that's the root of it. That's the evil of it all. And that's what we need to stop. If we can stop doing that, then I believe we can fix all the other problems. But it's so radical that most people just don't understand it.
They're
But
going to
we
have to get different words other than loaned into existence.
Okay,
Even
how
though
about
I
this? How about
understand
this?
it, but
Let me say it. Let me take a left turn here and try it another way.
Mhm.
I believe that the solution to all of this is it is not legal or possible to spend or lend what you do not have, period. You
Okay,
cannot spend
let's-
or lend what you do not have.
Hold on, let me get my head around that. All right. Spend or lend. What happens when you get a loan, a regular
Mhm.
loan, and you then have it's not really yours, but you may
Well,
have to use that to spend some,
no,
on some
that
things, like a
borrowing money is
business
okay.
loan.
Borrowing money is not off limits
But that's
because
kind of like spending what you
if the
don't
lender
own.
had let's just say the lender has the gold or has the money
Yeah,
and he gives you that and you promise to pay back that plus some more later on, that's legal. That's fine. I got no problem with that.
even with usury.
It's not, no, I don't care
Okay, that's
if
fine.
you want, it
Everyone's
does,
got
that's
used to it.
not the point. It's
Yeah.
not the percentage that matters. It's the loaning money into existence that matters.
All right.
Okay.
So if the bank
But the
gives
bank
you a
had the
loan,
gold and they gave you the gold and now you have the gold. There isn't, they didn't give it to you and give it to Fred and give it to, you know, Jim over there. They just gave it to you and nobody else. So that's what I'm talking about is loaning into existence what you do not have. Well, if you have a ton of gold and you loan 2 tons out, you're breaking this principle. You
but
are loaning
they're
into
not
existence
loaning
what you do
gold
not
out. They're
have.
loaning tickets.
Well, it's the same thing. Well,
But they're adding
it's not
tickets that
quite.
aren't representing the goal.
Yeah. The
So
point I was trying to make
okay,
with the tickets is there's a finite amount being lent back, but what's owed back is more than what I put out, and it
yeah.
doesn't even exist. And that's the same thing with money. So that's where that
So yeah,
analogy comes
so
from.
I want to all right, so I want to kind of step away from fiat currency for the time being and still
Okay.
understand this concept with gold backed,
Well,
coupons.
can I expound on this principle I
Yeah.
just gave you? Okay.
Hmm.
So, for example, there are 2 things that we do every day, and we think it's just fine. One is short selling. Now, it's called naked short selling. That means you're selling something, a future, contract, and you're promising to deliver it at a later date, but you don't actually have it because you're
Right.
planning to buy it back, and hopefully at a profit. I believe that should be illegal
Yes, it's brought
because
down in total
that
economies.
violates
Yes.
the rule I just gave,
Yeah,
which
I
is
agree.
you are selling or lending into existence what you do not have. Now,
Hmm.
if you are a producer, let's suppose you're a silver mine, you're a copper miner, or you're a farmer and you got hogs, then you can sell. Or let's suppose you have oil. You own some tracts. You have the leases or the tracts of land so that you can bring the oil out of the ground and it's there, but it's still in the ground and you want to sell
Right.
futures contracts. I got no problem with that because you own those assets. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're selling oil's futures, but you don't even have any, you have no basis for doing that, that should be illegal. That's my
Yes,
opinion.
I agree. Okay, so there's
The
the
next
guys in
thing
the
is
Middle
stocks.
Ages. The guys in the Middle Ages, they were hiding because if anyone found out, they'd be hung. But now it's pretty much the way of life for all countries.
It's
Is that what
it's
you're saying?
going on everywhere. And I'll tell you what is going on in the stock market. People are shorting stocks. The big dogs, what they do is they don't want the little dogs, to give them competition.
Right.
So they short the little dog's stock and they drive them out of business
Yeah.
because by shorting their stock, it drives it lower. Not only do they drive them out of business, but they also made a profit on it going down.
And they did it
And
without
and they
any
did it they
substance,
did it without
completely
owning the
illegally.
stock in the
Yeah.
first place. And I think that should be illegal. That's
Yes,
my
it should be
opinion.
illegal. All right. So is anyone else talking about that? Are there any
No, just me,
politicians who have
as far as
rebutted?
I know.
Just you.
But
Okay.
this is what we must do with money. Now, I talked about commodities and I talked about stock market. Those are trillions. We're talking about trillions of dollars. But even so, it's still tiny, minuscule compared to what's going on with money. Because what's going on with money is multi-trillions, I don't even know, hundreds of trillions. I mean, it's literally all the wealth in the world has been loaned into existence. That's how much there is.
All right, hold on. So you're talking about, all right, so you talked about something that money isn't money, is what it sounds like. Can you start over with that?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm saying this principle that I gave earlier, you cannot
Yeah.
lend or sell what you do not have, applies to 3 places. One is commodities, 2 is
Mhm.
stocks, 3 is money. And by far the largest of the 3 is money.
Got it. I
That's the only
understand.
point I'm
Okay.
trying to make.
All right, but
And literally every country in the world that issues money does it the same way. They borrow money from some bank, whether, it might be different for different countries, but they borrow money and then they spend it. And then they go into debt. And literally every government on earth, almost, Russia might be an exception. There's probably some exceptions, but almost every government on earth is in debt. So governments are in debt, corporations are in debt, individuals are in debt, everybody has a mortgage. I mean, it's just, and now they're trying to bring third world, they want their standard of living to raise so they can go into debt because they need more debtors. Because it's like It's like the Beast. You remember that? Remember that? What was it? Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me, Seymour. I
Yes,
don't know if you
yes.
saw it.
Yes,
It's
I
the
did. The
same thing. You
plant,
got
the
to
giant
continue to
fetus
feed the
plant.
beast. Because the beast continues. It's by nature of it. It has to. The debt can't do anything other than continue to grow. And I didn't make this point earlier, but I'll make it now. If there's more debt than there is money to pay it, what's the solution? You issue more money. In other words, you find more debtors, and that's inflation. That's what it is.
Okay, I understand that.
So you just have to keep putting out more debtors and more. You cannot just stop because the debt continues to grow. It doesn't stop, and eventually the whole darn thing has to come crashing down. I believe that we're very close to that.
Yeah,
right
I
now,
think that's what I'm seeing too. All right,
in a
so
way
I
that
think
we've
a lot
never
of
had
people are.
in the world.
So I think the biggest way, or if you're going to get the population to understand something, then you're going to have to, I think, get them to understand this concept that I'm struggling with. Okay,
That's okay.
so I think I represent the average
You're more than average.
normie in terms of money. No, with money, I don't understand the concept of it. Like right here, you say there's things that are traded, commodities, stocks, and money. I don't understand how you can even
Well,
have money in the
money is
same
cash. Well, let's put it this way: when a
category as
company
commodities and stocks.
when a company issues stock,
that which
what they're
commodities
doing is they're saying you have an ownership. If you buy stock in a company,
Excuse me.
bless you.
One
I'll
more.
wait till you're done.
I should get like a
Hope
sneeze
you're all right.
button.
Yeah, when you
I'm
buy
fine.
stock from a company, you have a part of that ownership of that company. I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically what you have.
Right.
And the company had the right to issue that, and it's worth whatever people are willing to pay for it. That's what the stock market is all about. So it's not. I mean,
But
I
it's
guess you could say
using
it's
money.
kind of like
All of these are
money.
using money. Yeah, but it's using money. It wouldn't function without money.
Yeah, right. Well, money is the cash. I mean, money is the thing that, when you settle a trade, you
Hmm.
almost always settle it in
Money.
US dollars, which is money, or if you lived in Japan, you'd probably settle it in yen, or, you could settle it in something else, but you're always trading something for something else. So you're
Right.
trading a stock for US dollars, or you're trading Bitcoin for, something else. Bitcoin is attempting to be money, and it
Is
is.
Bitcoin money,
It fits
or is
all
it
of the
something
definitions.
else?
I believe it does. The definitions of money, if you go back, what people are looking for in money is, first of all, they want it to be scarce, so that, and they want to have some control over, they don't want people just coming out and making money for nothing, because you worked hard for your money. It isn't fair if somebody else can just make new money for nothing. So you don't want that. So you don't want counterfeit. And you want it to be something that you can manage how much of it there is. And, we created the illusion that that's the case, but it's really not the case. It's indirectly controlled by the federal interest rates, which we can talk about that, how they control the money supply. We can talk about that later, but I just
Yeah.
want to get to the fact that they do have a control over how much money gets loaned into existence, but it's the individual banks that do the loaning. The Federal Reserve controls how much the individual banks can loan into existence. So ultimately, the Federal Reserve does control how
Yeah,
much
let's get
gets
into the
loaned into
structure of the
existence.
Federal Reserve. All right, so the Federal Reserve allows the banks to do certain things.
Right.
They have the say of what rules the banks can operate under. Is that correct?
Yes.
The banks in the United States. All right. How else does the Federal Reserve operate? Is it really part of the government, or is it independent of the
No,
government?
it's privately owned.
Okay, so they step in. So they're like a government contractor. They stepped into the government and said, "Hey, we have this business idea,
Right.
and it could be good for you.
Right.
It would be really good for us, and it could be really good for the people too."
Let me back up
Yeah,
just one step, just to be totally clear.
yeah,
What we call cash, which is coins and dollar bills,
yeah.
which used to be used a lot more than they are today. But
Right
that
now, it's
is
being done to
actually,
credit.
there is no interest on that. That's actually directly issued by the federal government. The Federal Reserve
All right, I'm gonna
doesn't
put
make interest
government over
on
here.
those dollars directly. If that makes
The
sense.
Federal Reserve does not
The
make
government
interest on
borrows
the
money and
actual
then they print
printed
it.
money in cash. Got it. So it's
Yeah,
not
so
part of
only
their
the
deal.
cash. So
Okay.
cash is different, but cash, as when I say cash, I mean hard money, silver, coins and actual physical paper.
Does
Okay.
the Federal Reserve
But
print
that's
the
like
money,
less than
or does the
1% of the
government
money supply.
print the money?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Who prints the money? The
The
Federal
federal
Reserve?
government prints the money.
The
So that's
government
why, yeah,
prints.
I mean, listen, these people are smart.
They
They
kept their
don't
hands out
want
of everything. Yeah.
to be blamed. If the federal government, if Federal Reserve was printing it, then everybody could point their fingers to them. But no, the federal government prints the money. So that's not the big, that's like less than 1% of the total money supply today. The main supply of money comes from, the checkbook money, the interest, the money that's loaned out
The
into,
extra tickets.
and that's 99%. And that's what the Federal Reserve controls.
All
So
right.
who gives a rip about the coins and the dollar bills? Okay, but you want me to talk about
Yeah,
the
go ahead and
structure of the
talk, and
Federal Reserve?
I'll worry.
Okay,
Yeah,
so here's
please.
what happens. The Federal Reserve controls basically the interest rates. And that's how they control it. And it's really ingenious. You got to give them credit for it. What happens is banks borrow money overnight from the Federal Reserve. And there's also what's called and so if that rate is higher or lower, that's going to determine how much money they're going to lend out. But more important than that is the fractional reserve rate. Okay, and that's going to take we're going to take it up the next level to understand this concept. But this is how it actually works. Let's just suppose the fractional reserve rate is 10%. I don't even know what it is now. It doesn't matter. It's some number. I think it's lower than that. But let's suppose it's 10%. What that means is when a bank borrows, let's say $1,000 from the Federal Reserve, they pay that Federal Reserve interest on that $1,000, but they can loan that $1,000 out, but they have to keep 10%. So they can loan 900 of it out, and they have to keep 10% in reserve in their vaults, as it were. All right. Well, the next step would be then whoever that $900 is loaned to, let's suppose somebody bought a car with it. Then the seller of the car is going to take that $900 and what are they going to do with it? They're going to deposit it in a bank. Okay, so that's $900 is now can be used, and this is where the whole trick is. That $900 can now be used as long as you keep 10% of it. In other words, $90, you can loan out the other 810 to somebody else. And that's why, remember I said there was only 1,000 to begin with, but now there's 1,900 because there's the 1,000 you first had, you loaned out, you got a $900 loan. And then somebody, again, it's probably a different bank, but the banking system as a whole was enriched another $900. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Then that got back into the banking system, and then you loan out $810 off of that. And then that comes back. And let's suppose somebody bought, I don't know, a boat. And then the seller of that puts that 810 back into the banking system, and then you can loan out 90% of that. Are you with me? It just keeps on going. So ultimately, from that original $1,000 with a 10% reserve requirement, you can loan out $10,000. You don't do it all at once, and that's the sneaky part. So it feels like, geez, I'm getting somebody else's deposits. Well, yeah, but the bank owes the depositor and you both. They violated the rule. They loaned out what they did not have. They loaned out somebody else's asset. Okay, when you put your money in the bank, you're expecting that money is still there for you, right? Well, they loan 90% of it out to somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's how the money supply is expanded. So by tweaking the fractional reserve amount, they can control how much money gets loaned into existence. By tweaking the Federal Reserve rate, they can influence how much the banks are borrowing from them every day. Banks are all about, it's all on margin, all that kind of
All
stuff.
right.
So that's how they control it.
Okay. I want to bring it down a little bit. All right. So let's think about a couple big pictures. One, why is this evil? I understand what has happened to other countries, and I want to know how is this going to actually affect society in the long run. I see in the first place, somebody's getting the short end of the stick at all times, and it just keeps getting, that number keeps increasing. So if you keep running out of money, then somebody is losing something along the way. And the Fed and the banks certainly aren't going to allow themselves to actually have anything taken from their pocket. So
There you go.
some citizen somewhere in the country is at all times losing money. So the
Hmm.
foreclosures and the bankruptcies and so on and so forth.
But inflation is
Expand upon
called
that
the
really quick.
hidden tax,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what it is. And let me just say, from the time of Andrew Jackson,
mhm.
well, until and even in all fairness, even before Andrew Jackson, from 1792, I think, till 1913, guess how much inflation there was?
I don't know.
It was actually negative.
Really?
Yep, the dollar was worth more in 1913 than it was in 1835. Same dollar would buy you more stuff in 1913. Would you like to live in a world like that?
Yes, I think that's kind of like the way Bitcoin and some of the
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies are. It's
Well,
kind of at that
Bitcoin's
stage right now.
it's going up for other
Yeah.
reasons.
Right.
But
I
let's
got a
just think
million
about it.
questions. I got a million questions so that I can
Okay,
get
well
my head
let me
around.
just
Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead
just
and yeah.
make one point,
Hmm.
and that is because of technology and
Hmm.
because we can do things more efficiently and faster and better and everything like that, shouldn't we be able to get more stuff? Shouldn't we be able to buy more? Shouldn't our dollar go further today than it did 20 years ago or
Some
10
may
years
argue
ago?
that it does in more debt.
In,
I mean, we have multiple
yeah, but we
TVs,
can't buy
multiple
more
phones.
food with the same dollar.
Okay, so yeah, so there's some things, there's some like the average home in the 1950s would have, a TV or no TV, and now we have one in almost every room, and the
Right.
price of them are really dirt cheap. You could get anywhere. Or Walmart, a
That's
large
true.
screen TV for like $50. It's something
But
crazy.
houses is more.
What's that?
Food and housing and stuff that
Houses
you
and
need to
cars,
live.
yes. Cars
Insurance
were only a couple
costs.
$1,000s when I was born, but now
Yeah.
they're in the, tens, 20s at minimum.
Yes.
I understand there are certain things that are going up. There are certain things that are going down. So
I think
is
they
that
would go
saying
down
we
even more.
can't? What's that?
They would go down even more. And
I can see the benefit of getting out. The biggest issue I have is there's no way to sustain a normal income. What I see here in this town is the teachers don't get paid enough to live. And I used to think that was a joke when I heard about it up in Toledo because they got paid a
oh,
lot more than they get here. And they would say
mhm.
that we don't get enough to live and the houses are the same price here as they were there. It made no sense. They're coming in and they're leaving. I mean, I can't tell you how many teachers are passing through this town.
Well, that's sad.
And so let's just take a job like a teacher or a plumber. Let's go something where that income is pretty much not going to go up that fast. So business, you can make as much as you're able to work and sell. But a
Mhm.
teacher, it's a set income you can't control. It's it's not adjusted for inflation, though, teachers maybe, but other jobs aren't. Um, I think it's going to take, you're going to see a lot of people fall as the inflation goes up. It's already doing that. And then
Oh
all of a
yeah.
sudden it swamps out jobs.
Well,
So
and there's
this is the
more and more
biggest
homeless
concern.
people and
Yeah, this is my
people that can't
biggest
make it.
concern with what is happening. So it seems to me that all of these countries eventually the balloon pops. Is
Yeah.
that correct? Is there any way out of the balloon popping?
No, I don't think
It
so.
always does. It
It
was
has to.
designed. They maybe did they know that it was going to do that,
Yes.
or is this just been going on for hundreds, if
No.
not thousands, of
They
years? And
they
they say,
knew it was
well,
going to pop.
all right, and these bankers,
People that understand what I'm trying to teach today
yeah,
know that the balloon has to pop. It's
and
it's
they don't care at all.
no, they want to be there. Listen, they can cover it up by a war. That's what they really want. A war is a great way to cover it all up and then institute a new system and start over with a new system. That's what they want.
And if you have a large number of countries that are the balloons are all ready to pop at the same time, World War would help cover
Yeah,
that.
World War would be great.
All right,
And
so
then see
local war
the
for an
biggest thing
individual
is you want to make
economy.
sure that if you're one of the people that are in charge of this whole thing, that you don't get blamed. As
All right, I
long
got a
as you don't
question.
get blamed, as long as you get
Mhm.
everybody fighting each other and you are just the puppet on the top, and then you're grateful. You're glad that that's happening. And then when everything comes crashing down, you're all ready for plan B. You're all set. You've been
All right,
set for
so
decades.
is this your opinion, or do you have historical facts that the what I'm gonna say is true? So, as a country starts to crumble economically, and
Mhm.
the balloon is about ready to pop, there is the environment building up already because everyone's broke and hungry, that war is the solution, and that, like, I'm thinking of Germany right before World
Yes,
War II,
yes.
right?
People
So
were
is it that
destitute.
people knew that and put him into place, or allowed things into place that, like Hitler is what I mean, to cover up the bubble popping? And is that something we
The,
expect then from the United States?
uh, Hitler is a real interesting guy. First of all, I think Hitler was used. Hitler didn't just come to power for no reason. So I think there were there were money influences behind him. And because of that, he was allowed to do a lot of really good things for the German people. And so they actually liked him a lot. They loved him because
Hmm.
of all the good things that he did.
Hmm.
And but that doesn't mean he himself was a good guy. I'm not saying that. He had some pretty twisted beliefs, and I'm not supporting that at all. But we can't have a fair hearing about Hitler to say that he didn't do good things for the German people, because he definitely did.
Yeah, they were
But it's
pretty
also
happy.
true
They
that
were
he
pretty
was
happy until the
backed
very
by
last
money.
part of the war. Yeah.
Yeah, he was backed by money, and maybe to some extent, the very people that he was criticizing were the people that were backing him. That is no maybe. That is a fact.
Who?
That's
Yeah,
what
I
was
want
going.
names of that one.
Just like
Can you give me some
JFK
names?
Senior.
Can you give me some names? I want to stick with that. All right, so
Okay.
Hitler, who is Hitler? Yeah, tell me about who is Hitler
Well, there was
bashing
a
that was
couple of
giving money?
corporations. The Farber, was it JG Farber or something like that, was big, and had a lot. That was a company, so he had control over several
Where
companies.
were they from?
IG Farber, that's what it was. They're
IG
from
Farben,
Germany, of
yes.
course.
What country are they from? Is that Switzerland? Where is that? That's in
Germany.
Europe.
I'm pretty sure IG Farber was German, but
I'm gonna
the
look it up.
biggest thing when I say the money, I'm talking about the banks. I'm talking about the Rothschilds. I'm talking about the money
So he was
powers.
criticizing the Rothschilds and
He
the
was, but he
banks.
was also being funded by them at the same time.
Why would he do that?
Why did Kennedy come to power and then turn on the mafia that got him elected?
I don't know.
Kennedy's, let's be honest, JFK's father was not a good guy. I mean, he
Yes,
did a
I
lot of
know.
short
I'm
selling
familiar. Yes.
and he was involved in the mob and the
Yes, he
Irish
was.
mob in a way. I don't want to paint an
No, he
untrue
was
picture,
he was
but
he was part of bootlegging, through
I
Canada
believe that
in
JFK
Prohibition.
saw what was going on. And again, he's,
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe and all of, there was some bad personal things
Nobody's
about him as
perfect.
well.
Nobody's perfect.
But I get it. All that aside, I think he was like Andrew Jackson. He was prepared to fight these guys because he understood what they were all about, and he understood, and he tried to issue, you know, uh, silverback, goldback money, and was trying to get us back onto the gold standard and all these kind of things. And yes, I do think that's why they took him out. So, so was Kennedy a good guy or a bad guy? Same thing with Hitler. Was he a good guy or a bad guy? Yeah, I mean, he had a bad guy. He had a lot of bad ideas. I don't want to go down that route too badly, but
He's a
he
bad
was
guy.
financed.
He was all right. He
These
was
guys financed
definitely got
both
to put
sides of the
problems.
war.
All right. So let me go back to IG. It's Farben, not Farber,
Yeah.
but it's very close. Okay, so that's now. Yeah, it is. It was a German chemical and pharmaceutical
Yes.
conglomerate.
Yeah.
Okay, formed in
That
19.
was one of his big supporters, and one of his. I just
Now I
mentioned that
understand. All right,
Volkswagen
Bayer.
and some
That's
of
where
the
the
other
Bayer thing came in. I'm familiar with
manufacturers, they
Bayer.
were
All right,
all,
that's right.
fascism by definition is the marriage of government with
Government
big
and
business.
business. Yes,
And
that's right.
so he was a fascist. There's no question
Yes.
about it. He wanted control over all these corporations.
Yeah.
And how did he get all that? He had money behind him. It just doesn't happen for no reason. And I'm sorry, but these people, they play the long game, and they were playing the long game with him. And they gave him money. They made him seem like a great guy. And I don't want to get too bogged down into
I think, yeah,
Hitler
no,
stuff,
I
but
think
I
because
think he
I want
was
to deal with
forced
the
into a
Fed, but
lot of
I ought
these
to get a little, I
wars.
will touch on it. All right, so I want to kind of get an idea of this so I can understand it in order to see it through the lens of an American,
Okay.
which you already do, but you understand this concept and I don't. So, all right, so the bubble is about ready to burst, and they quick brought in some person who everyone loved and is going to do great things for um, the country. And at
Mhm.
that point, then instead of the war, no, a war started though. So he kind of got in, and he's pretty much not what. How many years was it after he was in before he invaded Poland? It was like it
Well, he was
was a
elected
while.
as chancellor in 1933.
Yeah. So it was
So
like,
that's when he was able to start, all of his great stuff. And by
let's see.
1936, the Olympics was held in Berlin.
Yeah.
He uh, Germany was already on the path toward, being restored and being a great world power and all these
They
kinds
were
of
already
things.
coming back.
Oh yeah, and by the way, just so you know, the King of England in 1937 was that King Edward, who was king for 1 year and then he abdicated. He was a huge fan of Hitler. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know that, but
No, there's a
that's
lot of people that
the
were
English king
not.
was on the same side as Hitler. So there was a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the late 30s. And I'll just say this: Charles A. Lindbergh, the famous aviator, and his father, who was a senator from Minnesota, they were enormously pro-Hitler in the
Mhm.
30s because they saw Hitler as somebody who understands the things that I'm talking about today. This kind of conversation was happening a lot in more than it is today, even in the 20s and 30s. And they looked at Hitler as here's somebody that's going to take on these people and bring them down, and we're all for it. And then they find out, well, Hitler's being financed by these very people we thought we were going to take him down. He isn't the guy we thought he was. And then literally they just stopped giving him money, and then he had nothing. He had to fall, and that's how the war came ultimately to an end.
All
So
right.
anyway, I don't want to get too, people might argue with me about that, but
That's okay. That's okay.
if you
You're
don't
like,
think that money had something to do with how the war,
no, no, no.
was
I think
started and how it ended,
no.
you don't
Yeah.
you don't understand war. It just
Yeah. I agree. No, it makes sense. All
I
right.
believe that
So
Hitler was forced. Yes, he did want. He was very militaristic and all those things, but I don't think that he was kind of forced to fight in a lot of ways. I don't think it was necessarily all about his being aggressive in every instance. So I'm not saying that makes him a good guy. Don't get me wrong.
no, I think, well, I think he wasn't his war strategy. I mean, of course, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah,
But he is a very, it was a very small country compared to the territories he was trying to take over,
yeah,
and it was very short-sighted. And there
yes,
obviously was something wrong with him. There is no way he should have
totally,
invaded so many different
totally.
so many different
But the
battlefields at
piece
the
I want
same
to get
time.
want
Yeah,
to come
let's
away
focus on,
with is
yeah.
that he got financed by these people, and so did Napoleon. They used him too.
Okay, so yes, I have heard if you're a bank and you got two people in an argument, yeah, we'll loan you money and we'll loan you money and hope you work it
Mhm.
out. So they
Same
don't
thing with
care about who
Democrats and
they're loaning money to.
Republicans. As
Right.
long as they can control the Democrats and control the Republicans, they don't care.
Okay.
Let them fight.
So let's now move on to the Fed was put in place during the Woodrow Wilson
Yep.
administration, 1913,
Yep. Can I just
and
say a word about that? There
yeah,
was a
sure.
there was a I'm forgetting the name of it. A bill. What's his name? A well-known banker was putting a bill in 1907, and I'm forgetting his name. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart. But anyway, 1907. I remember the date, but can't remember his name. Anyway,
You
and
remember
that
more
was
than
shot
most.
down because that was the banker's bill. He was saying, "Well, we need this bill because that'll solve runs on banks." And there had been a bunch of runs on banks in the early 1900s and late 1890s. Okay, so then basically in 1910 there was all these people met together. It's called the Jekyll Island, and they plotted this out. And
Yeah, the
basically,
creature
the
from Jekyll
creature of
Island.
Jekyll Island, they
Yeah,
they decided they're basically going to do the same bill, except now this guy that was promoting it in 1907 is going to oppose it in 1913, and everybody says, "Oh, well, the banks don't like it; it must be good." And that's
got it.
literally how they did it. Same thing as Napoleon pulled on, everybody in the war at Waterloo
Makes sense.
with the
Okay,
Rothschilds.
that is interesting.
Same
So
business.
they're playing
But
poker.
but
All
I
right.
yes, but there's one other important fact that needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1912 election was, I think, one of the most pivotal elections in American history. And
Okay.
the reason is because after the Civil War, the Republican Party was highly favored. The only Democrat president at all was Grover Cleveland. And I like Grover Cleveland, but we'll leave that aside. Anyway, so and Theodore Roosevelt was hugely popular, and he was known as a populist, and he was getting all these things done. And then he his first term was the continuation of McKinley's term in 1900. And then 1904, he got elected.
Mm-hmm.
1908, he could have run again. There was no prohibition, but he chose not to. He let his VP Taft take over. So then in 1912, he thought, I don't like the way Taft is running things. I want to come back. And basically, because he did that, he started a new party called the Bull Moose Party. And he split the Republican Party with Taft and Theodore Roosevelt. And as a consequence, the Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, won. And I think that was this is my opinion. People say Biden's the worst president we've ever had. And I would say the president that has done more harm to our nation in this country's history is Woodrow Wilson. That's my number one.
I think there's a lot of
vote.
people who agree with you. And
Woodrow Wilson, because he's
lately,
responsible for the IRS. He's responsible for the Federal Reserve. He's responsible for bringing back the KKK. That happened under his watch. He's responsible for World War I, which he said we wouldn't have. He's responsible for the United Nations, which he envisioned. He's responsible for all of that. So I blame him for all of those things. And it wouldn't have happened if the Republicans had won the 1912 election, which they would have easily if they hadn't split the ticket. So that has to be said. That was a godsend to the bankers.
I agree. We always think of the current problems we're going through, and so of course that's why people kind of do that. But after years go on,
I think we wouldn't have had any of that stuff under Teddy
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. And it's a shame. I wish that he and Taft had gotten together, and but it is what it is. But the world would have been different if that hadn't happened.
So we've gone over an hour talking about all of the problems, and
there's a lot more
pretty much
guarantee
bottom's going to drop out. I would like to spend some time to see, is it possible to fix it? I mean, obviously it's going to the system will implode, but as a nation, what could we do? And is anyone talking about it?
Okay, nobody's talking about my solution, which is.
What is your solution?
It's going to sound so crazy.
I want to hear your solution. I'll promote
I'm actually
it everywhere
very
if
optimistic.
you can explain it to me.
And I have said this before, but I'll say it again. Let's imagine that you can imagine that a bank who could loan money, all the money they ever wanted, and basically it's the same people that are controlling. They can loan it to governments, they can loan it to corporations, they can loan it to everybody. Ultimately, because they continue to get this interest, they can ultimately come into control of virtually all the wealth in the entire world. Do you see how that can happen?
Yes, I understand that. I want to
now let's just take an if. I'm not proving it. I'm just saying, let's suppose that a small handful of people, let's say 100 families or 100 people, small group, has control of, let's say, 80% of the world's wealth or more.
Okay.
Let's say hypothetically, I'm not proving that that's the case.
No, it's probably like that. It's probably very close to that.
True.
Let's just say a small handful somehow has accumulated the greatest amount of wealth. All right.
How do you think you could? And would you agree that they got it unjustly? They got it by violating the rule I talked about.
Yes, if it was part of the system, and I didn't know that I would have to buy more tickets for other people going to the movie, then I would say that's unjust. And illegal. It's not illegal, but I think it should be. But
80% of the world's wealth is held in unjust hands, is 80%. What I'm saying. What if that were true? How would you fix that? It's
probably true, but I wouldn't say it's illegal though.
Well, let's just say it.
I'd say it's true. I'd say it probably is true. Okay, go ahead.
Let's say it was true. Could you fix it? Now they own everything. They own all the corporations. They own all the media. They own all the governments. But
let me think. All right, could I fix it if I had? All right, so it depends on who.
You don't have any money.
I can't do anything. I can't fix it. But somebody who could fix that if there's 10, let's just say 10 families, or that control 80% of the wealth in the world. Let's
not talk about who yet. Let's just talk about how.
How would you do it?
In a broad scope.
If they own everything.
Yeah, but there's only 100 people, or let's just say even 1,000 people, just some small number.
As a Christian,
these
well,
these are very unjust people.
Well, we said they have the money in an unjust way, an illegitimate way, but it wasn't illegal. So somebody agreed to this.
That's true.
Make it legal. And the moment you participate in it, you have only yourself to blame. So there's nothing we can do about those people.
But of course, you and I have no choice in the matter.
Now, here's the thing. Let's suppose this is what I would do if I were a part of the top top secret investigators. I was like the elite men in black. Okay.
Hmm. Okay.
And I could move in and out of under tunnels and go to the moon and plan with other people. This is what I would do.
Hmm.
I would get them on the very smallest crime and arrest them, get them out of circulation.
Okay.
But I would not go after them for these reasons, because it is something that, again, you said it's been around for 500 years. I
Sure.
mean, the whole grandfather clause would kind of allow them to be free to do whatever they want to do.
Fair.
However, if they were doing it and it's unjust, and what you said is, I do see this as very unjust. I see it as unjust. A lot of businesses are doing, and a lot of organizations, and
Sure.
it's just simply not right. So
Right.
if I were doing it and I knew that they were going to cause harm, they willfully causing the economy of the United States to fail, I'd get them on a small crime and get them out of circulation.
Sure.
Take away the
Like
power
Al
they
Capone.
have to. Yes, like Al Capone. There was no possible way to get him on the big crimes. They couldn't get him for murder. They couldn't get him for bootlegging. They couldn't get him for nothing
Okay. Now,
except what
would
they
you do it
could
publicly,
control.
or would you do it
Hmm. No, I'd just remove them. I just
wouldn't make a big deal out of it?
I would
Because
arrest them.
you
and then make a
understand
deal
these
with
100
them.
people they're not senators, they're not presidents, they're way above all that.
Right, right. I would just make a
They're
deal
not
with them.
actors, they're none of that.
I would take them in the room and say, "You're going to go to jail, and that's it because you did, such and such crime,
Mhm.
and
Do you think it'd be
you have
hard
a
to
plea
find
deal.
a crime
Do you
that
have a
they'd be
plea
guilty
deal?
of?
What's that?
Do you think it'd be hard to find a crime that's the next step we need to get to?
How could we find a crime that they've done? I mean,
Okay.
I
Let
don't
me
know.
just back up. Let me
Yeah.
go back to the mob
I don't know who the
analogy.
person is, so.
Let me go back to the mob analogy, okay?
Mhm.
So how does the mob keep people quiet?
Intimidation, they can actually
Yeah.
kill them, they can destroy their name. There's a lot of different ways that they
Okay,
can
but
do that.
I think the most common is blackmail. Would you agree?
Blackmail, yeah, that's a
So
good one.
you say
Mhm.
you want to join the mob? You see that guy?
Yeah,
Check him
that's
out.
the first thing they do. They
86
they
of 'em.
have you kill somebody, and I
Yeah.
know this from
Okay.
some girls
Now
I knew were
now we
gangs.
can
They had to sleep with all the guys in the gang.
right.
It's just messed up.
Now we
But
got something on
yeah,
you, so we can trust you.
all right.
Okay.
So
So do
they,
you think that's not going on? That's what Epstein Island is all about.
yeah, no, I'm familiar. I'm familiar. I'm
Okay.
sure that's what that is. Okay, so that's why he gets the
So
bigger bangers.
do you think these mafiosos trust each other?
No, I would imagine.
No, they
I
don't. Do you
don't
think
know
they don't
because they
know?
kind
They
of.
don't trust each other. They have something on they have something on each other. That's what's going on. So yes,
Yeah,
they're
but
all guilty of something.
so that's probably all right.
That's
So
my
the
point.
other term that I think that you're a made man, right? Is that
Yeah.
the right term?
If
So
you could get control of
you'll
all
have
the
proven you're
blackmail
trustworthy
material,
by doing certain things.
yeah. But what I'm
That's
saying, if you could get control of all the blackmail material, you can take them all down. Fair? And you can confiscate their assets. And that's the important
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I
Suppose you
think
could do
that's the way
that.
to do it. All right, so I
Suppose
think
you could confiscate the assets of 80% of the world's wealth. Do you think that would solve our national debt and a few other problems as well?
yes, of course it would.
Well, that's what I think is happening
All
right
right,
now.
so let's just suppose there are a small handful. Let's just say it's hundreds, maybe thousands, but maybe less. All right,
Some
so
number. I don't care what the number is. It's
yeah,
some number. And I
a
believe some
finite
people
number
know.
less than
Now you asked who. I have an answer for the who as well.
I'd like to know who, yes, and how do
Who
you
has
know
to be
who?
somebody that's got the muscle to do it. Because we're not talking about, I mean, if you talk about a drug lord, you can't just get inside some drug lord's home without having to go through a whole bunch of security guards, right? I mean, they're well protected, right?
That's true, yeah.
So you got to have plenty muscle. And these are people that can pay for anything. So money is no object with these people. So the only who that can compete with that at all is a very loyal military. That's it.
Oh, you're talking about who would be involved in bringing this down. Yes, no, that
Yes, that's the
yes,
only who.
I
You and I
believe that's
have
what
not got
Space
the muscle
Force.
to do it.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
believe
I'd
this
love
is
to
what
do it,
Space
but
Force is all about.
yes, that's what
Yeah,
Space
so
Force
Space
is all
Force,
about.
Space Force has control over all the satellites, all the surveillance of anything in the sky from all the agencies and
Yep.
everything now. So it is
Now,
extremely powerful branch of the military, if not the most powerful right now.
right.
It
Now,
is
one more detail that I think
extremely
is important.
powerful, and no one even
If
knows about it.
if we have this scenario where all the wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, who do you take out first? Do you take out the top or do you take out the lower downs? Because there's millions of lower downs. We're talking about literally every mayor and every police chief and all of them. They're all bought.
I wouldn't take out the little
A
one.
lot of them. You don't take those guys out. Who do you take out first? Is my question.
Yeah, I would take out the top.
That's what's going on right now.
I would go for the top.
And then what do you do? Then
I would
what do
probably
you
get like
do?
one or two, right beneath him or close to the
And
person first.
as you trickle down from the top, what do you do when there's some well-known people and you've taken them out already, but you don't want everybody to know? Then what do you do?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Hold on. That's crazy. All right, hold on.
It is
hold on.
crazy.
No, hold on. All right, let's suppose
The world is crazy right now. The world is
I know.
absolutely
I
bonkers.
see what you're saying. Okay, and you kind of have said this in many podcasts before. All right, let me think. So certain people were at the top, and they don't want the people beneath them to know they're coming for them next.
That partly, and then partly you're taking them out, and you don't want the rest of the world to know you, because optics are important. You don't want all the Joe Schmoes to go crazy and get bent out of shape and start a war. You want to keep them peaceful. So
would they be upset about that if a few bankers, and people who are
bankers,
messing with the economy?
People nobody knows, that's not a problem. I'm talking about Hollywood people, people that know.
Well, I think it's probably the reason they're being quiet is because they're still taking out people as they're going down.
Yes,
that would make more sense.
As they go down,
the population doesn't care.
As you move, there's the top rung, and then there's the next rung, which is the actors and the media and the senators and those are the next layer, and then you're going to the mayors and the state representatives and stuff like that. It trickles down.
I definitely wouldn't start with the millions of corrupt people who are all the most they're going to get is 3 years in jail anyway.
I believe right now we've taken care of the top level already. That's what I believe.
Do you have any evidence for that?
No, just trust the plan.
Okay.
I can't prove it. I've seen too many things that confirm that I believe that's what's going on.
I've seen some leaked military photos that are pretty convincing to me that suggest that they're doing some operations, and I really like that.
I can't prove it. I'm just a guy like you. I only know what I see, and I'm hearing this. I'm putting pieces together in my own mind. I'm thinking, this is what if this is really how the world is. What would I do? I would take it down as it's being taken down.
So I would do that.
And I would substitute some of the well-known people with actors and clones or whatever the heck I think
that gets a little weird. Why would you?
It gets a little weird, but
why would you need
that's
to?
going on. But you don't have to believe that.
No, but why would you? I
think there's some of that.
That's the thing. I don't think there's a reason to leave somebody. I just saw this. Somebody shared something. There's beliefs that JFK, that they put out a clone in the assassination because they knew it was coming, and therefore a clone got killed.
What to believe.
It's like, well, why would they kill a poor old clone? He's got feelings too. It's the whole thing. I can't. No, I get.
Well, that's actually happened. I think Bill Gates is a perfect example. I believe the original Bill Gates was taken out a decade ago. That's what I think.
I don't believe that.
And that they got to take care of the clone next, or whoever the heck. I think that. I do think that. I don't know. I can't prove it.
I don't think they're very good at cloning.
I think we can't underestimate.
Did you know that clones, they would have to have cloned them the moment they were born? They would have to have had
I don't know about that.
You can't make somebody grow fast and then stop growing to look exactly like somebody else. That changes the torque on the growth hormones would change. So when you're cloned at the same time. You take the baby, and then you have multiple people that grow up to look the same. You can't take.
I've seen a clone of a cow at.
It's from birth.
At the Minnesota Zoo. I know they can do that. But
they clone them, and then they grow them up to look the same later. They don't all of a sudden a clone walks out like a carbon copy. It has to grow.
I've seen meat lockers. I don't know what to believe.
They're growing.
I don't want to argue this point.
Meat.
I've seen meat lockers of human beings, and they're not alive, and yet they're going to be using them, or they're. I don't know what the heck they are, but I've seen them.
Where are you looking?
Pictures. I
dark
can show
web.
You photos of weird. No, I don't go to the dark web. I don't want anything to do with that. That's really weird.
There's some. There's some good. Yeah, there's some good stuff you can find. Just
let's put it this way. I just don't underestimate it, but that possibility. But I'm okay with just saying there's a bunch of actors out there, and I think there's a lot more actors out there than most people are willing to admit. Yeah. I mean, we can look at. I'll just give an example. Paul McCartney. I think that the original Paul McCartney died in 1966. I do think that. And I think that the guy that replaced him, his name is Billy Shears. He's really a good musician.
Yeah, I think he's probably better than
he's
Paul McCartney
amazing
if it's
and
a
probably
different
even
person, because
better.
he's certainly very good.
Yeah.
I like his
I've
his
nothing
later
against him,
stuff.
but I don't think he's the original Paul McCartney. I just
Okay.
don't think that.
No, you're not alone in that. I know this to be the case
And
in
why
my
have they been
heart
doing
for
this?
certain people. I don't know about Paul McCartney, but I have there because I've had a lot of people become vegetarians and a lot of people change over the years. So
Sure.
I kind of, and then here's the other thing too is kind of like a lot of the arguments you'll hear with Biden and stuff. Oh look, he's got this picture. He has this connected earlobe, and this one he done. And I looked at
Yeah.
two different pictures when he turned his ear. One of his ears has the low earlobe connected, and one doesn't.
Interesting.
So people you get it from two different
Yeah.
sides of the
I'm not an
face.
expert on
But
this,
if you
so
look
I'm
at a
okay.
video, watch him turn his head, he actually has one earlobe that actually is, you know what I'm
Interesting.
told. It's got the flap and the other one's connected.
I got
I've
you.
never seen that, but he really
I've seen
does.
those
You can
pictures.
see if he turns his head.
I've also seen
So
pictures, where they show it clearly looks
where his
like
face is coming
they're
off
wearing
of
a
the mask.
mask.
Yeah, I know. I get
So
it. I get it. There's something weird going on.
something weird's going on
All
all
right,
across
but
the board.
definitely, I want to talk about solutions. So this is definitely what I would do, and we could only hope that somebody is doing it.
Yeah.
What would be after this was be successful, a proper monetary system?
Well, as I said, we have to create a monetary system that doesn't violate these rules. You can't sell or lend what you do not have. So traditional banks, as we've known them for thousands of years, have got to go. And that's going to upset people. Think, well, how do we get loans? And but no, you can still get loans. We can still do.
How?
Okay, so when you go to a bank, all right,
Mm-hmm.
you can have your money in a deposit, and then you say, I have X amount of dollars in my account. Okay, that money cannot be lent out. It's literally your money. Nobody else can touch it. But what you can do, you actually would have to pay a fee to keep it there because the bank is providing a service for you. Okay, and the bank doesn't make a lot of money having you deposit your money there. The way the bank makes money is you buy something called a CD. Now, a CD, when you buy a CD, you give the bank money, the bank gives you a CD. You no longer have money. You got it?
Yeah.
So then they can loan that money out because they have it now. They didn't have it when it was yours in a deposit, but when you put it in a CD and get something else in exchange, you now have a CD, then they have something they can lend. Does that make sense? That's
Yes.
legal.
Yeah.
That is
makes
not
sense.
violating the rule.
I think this is something to be. I'm not saying it won't work. Something
Yes.
that one needs to think about, though.
Oh, believe me, there's a lot of people. There was a guy named Peter Cook.
Hold on, I didn't get my point yet. All right,
I'm
but go
sorry.
ahead, finish there. Then
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
No,
want
it's
to
all right.
talk over you too much.
No, I want to give my point of
Go
what I
ahead.
think it should be concerned about is the loans. I think will lean towards being more difficult to get, and
Maybe,
that
but
could
you
really
won't need
hurt
them as
the
much.
economy as well.
You won't need them as much. That's what
The
I
houses
believe.
are not going to come down in price at once, a few bankers are locked up. They're going to stay expensive. So
There'll be so much more wealth in the world. It's going to benefit everybody eventually. That's what I believe is going
can we
to
get some
happen.
stimulus checks for this to guarantee it?
Could be, yeah. I
I
mean,
think because
think about it.
economic
If
stimulus
we can
checks really do
confiscate
work.
hundreds of
'cause
trillions, we
yeah,
pay off the 35 trillion we take care of our obligations, and we still got some left over. I think that's realistic.
that
I
would be
really
nice.
do.
That
It's
would be
that
nice.
much. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
but I mean, the specifics, believe me, there are people who have thought about the specifics of how to create a system that's
No
legitimate.
doubt.
And there
Yeah.
was a man named Peter Cook who wrote several books in the 80s. And he was one of the people that when I first started studying this stuff, back in the 80s, on this very topic, long before Ed Griffin wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, which was, that was a big hit and it's a great book. But
Yeah.
I mean, there were people that were writing books in the 30s, and I have those books. Father Conklin, I think was his name. He would fill up baseball stadiums full of people to talk about this very stuff.
Do you
And
believe that the Wizard of Oz symbolized
oh
this
yeah,
situation? Could you
absolutely.
share some of that?
Well, I mean, the symbolism let's put it this way. There's the author, Frank Baum, was a
Mhm.
Mason.
Okay.
He was a Freemason. So he, good or bad, I mean, he understood that at that time, the big controversy was which should back the money, gold or silver? And the idea was that silver was kind of the poor man's money and gold was the rich man's money. And there was less of it, so it was more easy to control. So we wanted to have silver be the money. And William Jennings Bryan in 1896 ran against the Republican, saying, having this cross of gold idea. He has a famous speech that he gave called the Cross of Gold. Anyway, talking about the idea that we should have silver money instead of gold money.
What year was that?
When Frank Baum wrote the book Wizard of Oz in 1900. Sorry?
1900. I was just wondering what year that was. 1900.
Yeah, Frank Baum wrote the first book. He wrote like 20 some books on the Wizard of Oz, but the first one was 1900. And it was the yellow brick road, which of course is what? Gold.
Gold.
And she didn't have on ruby slippers. That was in the movie. In the book, she had on
silver slippers.
Silver slippers.
Yeah.
So it was kind of talking about those same ideas, and then she had to tap her silver slippers together, and that would make, no place like home. That would solve all the problems.
Who was the Wizard of Oz symbolizing?
Well, that's a good question. I guess this is before the Federal Reserve, but yeah, I mean, the banking elite existed before the Federal Reserve. So I guess they were kind of.
So the Wizard of Oz was symbolizing somebody who appears big, but really is a simple, small guy and hiding behind a curtain.
Exactly.
All right, let me just quick see if they have anything out there about Wizard of Oz really quick, because I still let my kids watch it because my daughter gets scared of anything.
Yeah, there's a good video series. This guy named Bill Still. Do you know that name?
What's the name?
Bill Still. I don't think he's making videos anymore, but 10 years ago he was, and he did a whole series on the Wizard of Oz and the meaning of the Wizard of Oz. It's really good. So I recommend it. I think it's probably still on YouTube. And he talked about the Federal Reserve and things like that as well. There's some good cartoons about the Federal Reserve that kind of break down the process of how money works as well. And I wish everybody would watch those. I used to read books in the 80s by a pastor named Sheldon Emery, and he had some interesting views on a lot of things, but he was definitely anti, Federal Reserve and anti non-constitutional money.
All right, so tell me a couple of things really quick before we end. The Federal Reserve, is this an actual organization? Who's in charge of it currently? I kind of know a lot of these things, but I just want to get you to sum it up. Where are they located currently? How many people work?
Well, the owners of the Federal, like everything else, there's several layers. Okay, so the owners of the Federal Reserve are big banks, like J.P. Morgan is one of the big banks.
I thought the feds dictate the rules to the banks.
No, the banks own the feds. Chase Bank, J.P. Morgan Bank.
Oh, okay.
They own the Fed.
They own the Fed, and they make the rules for the banks. All right.
Yeah, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
And then who owns those? That's the question. And who has the controlling interest in J.P. Morgan and Chase and all those big banks? Ultimately, it comes down to a handful of people who are pulling the strings, who nobody knows.
All right,
that's how it's always worked, and they don't want us to know about them. They want us fighting each other. I hope everybody understands that. That's
so you couldn't be a very good narcissist and at the same time be owning all the world's money,
yep.
Right?
And they control people through blackmail and all these other things that we've talked about. They've been doing that forever, long before the Federal Reserve. They got it down. They got it down to a science. So.
All right, good. Well, I like if they are doing this and they willfully are demolishing countries. So all right, let's just say they. When I say they, I don't mean the people working at the Fed. I don't even mean the banks. I mean, who owns the banks? That small handful. Yes. If they are willfully building up bubbles and popping them just to have money and power,
control. Ultimately,
then yes,
they certainly
they should be stopped from doing that. But being a Christian, I think yes, the right thing would be is to make sure that that they're actually committing some crime rather than just
sure.
No doubt they are. No doubt they are.
There is no doubt. They all
no doubt
are.
that they are, because if you're going to do something that
pedophilia
horrible,
is number one.
Yeah, well, if you're going to do something that horrible and you don't care about the consequences for
Yeah.
entire societies and families and people like
Mhm.
that, then yeah, you would
They're all
do
narcissists
all
and they're
sorts of.
all,
Well, I think it can't be narcissists because narcissists would want to show off their thing at the
well,
end.
okay, fair enough. Yeah,
They're
they're smarter
psychopaths,
than that.
sociopaths,
They are,
sociopaths. Maybe.
no
Okay,
question
they're a
about
little
it.
different than yeah. Narcissist wants to be in the spotlight. That would be
Fair.
Bill Gates. So
Yep.
he doesn't own all the
And
banks,
you
right? So
and
he
just to be clear, Bill Gates doesn't control Microsoft and never did.
no, he
And
didn't.
no, and neither does Mark Zuckerberg, doesn't control Facebook.
Okay, we're
All of
gonna go
that
on a
stuff.
whole different thing like that. All right, we can't go down there. I want to talk about it
Listen, if you
next week.
own,
Yeah,
if you control everything, you own everything. All right. Ultimately, you can do it through various channels, but ultimately the control comes back to
I
you.
wouldn't know. I don't own a whole lot. So, all
Yeah.
right, here's what we do. Next week, we're trying to get one podcast in there that is still to be uploaded, and then soon we're going to be doing the episode on the growing Earth. But I want to wait till John here. John will be
Yeah,
back
that's a
hopefully
good
next
one.
week.
I'm looking
So we
forward to
can
your theories.
yes, I have a mechanism for how the
Uh-huh.
Earth is growing.
Okay.
First, we got to establish is it growing or not, which is we'll have to lean on the work of other people.
Yes.
The reason this is not gained wide circulation, in the schools is because nobody can come up with a logical mechanism for how it could be happening.
Uh-huh.
Nobody doubts that. No, maybe it is certainly before
Or that it has
tectonic.
happened at different varying rates
Yes.
over the.
So the question is, if it is, and it has and still is doing it at a steady rate, what is the mechanism? I have a
Okay, so that's
theory.
a teaser for next week.
Yes, I have a
I got a
very.
million questions for you on that.
I don't
So
think you're gonna be able to argue any of it. It's completely
I,
locked up.
I don't have a dog in this fight, so
I know.
I don't know. I'm a believer. I think that there's, I think that the flood had a huge part of it, but beyond that, I'm open.
We'll talk. I'd love to share it, but I'll wait till we're doing a lot of the podcast, and then we'll talk, and then I'll kind of show you some of the evidence. There's a lot of evidence for it. All right, and it's simple.
Nice.
It's not something like like
Not like the Federal
Neil
Reserve.
Adams. No, that's complicated. Neil Adams, or was that? I'm sorry, isn't it? Yeah, he
Yeah.
was thinking about maybe like pions. There's peons or pions coming out of in and out of
Lions.
existence, and and I often had thought maybe had to do with crystals because crystals grow, and there could be this crystalline structure inside there. Nope, I have it so much simpler. It's very 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 easy, and it can be tested, and it probably is really what's happening to the world. So I
Wow.
can't wait to share it. I don't know if
I'm
I'm gonna
really
make
looking forward to that.
go into geology much in my life, but I was just wondering how could it be doing it, and something popped in my head, and I'm like, oh, I got to share this. So I'm looking
Good.
forward to it. We were going to have him as a guest. Unfortunately, he passed away. So
Yeah.
maybe we
Yeah. He was
can
awesome. I
honor
got a chance to
his
meet him.
work by illustrating a little bit, sharing some of it. All right, cool. All right,
Well, I
take
hope we
care.
answered at
Yeah.
least some of your questions on the
It,
Federal
it does.
Reserve.
I understand a lot of it, and I got lots of notes, and I can watch over this again if I really understand. Because there's just a couple things where I'm going, I understand it, but it's like I hear it, but I can't get my head around it yet.
Right.
But I definitely understand um, the con aspect of the
I'll
game.
just say this, it's very lonely to have a lot of this knowledge and just I explain it to people and they get it sort of, but they don't
It's
really want to dig
complicated.
into it,
It's
and it's
very
like
deep, and they probably
this is
designed it to
important.
be that deep so that people could get their head around it.
No.
So, and then plus there's also the issue is a very complex kindling makes a fire slower to burn. And this is probably if they know it's going to burn out, they want it to last as long as possible. So they make it very complicated. And
Mhm.
so that's why they have all these other things that they can do this to make it last a little longer before the bottom drops out. They can do this and so on and so forth. So if it's a fire that's going to burn out eventually, just
Mhm.
it's very complicated and it's designed that way. It's also
Yes.
complicated to get your head around there. Um,
And
so
everybody's participating in it. And here's
yeah,
just
we
one more
are. We
thing.
are.
You, in real estate, the way to make money is the more debt you can accumulate, the more money you can make. You buy houses for nothing down. What is it? That means you go into debt and you're rewarded for that. Under the system that I'm proposing, you would not be rewarded for going into debt. But this system rewards going into debt for, buying assets that are going up, for
Right.
appreciating
Right.
assets. You're rewarded for doing that. And that is not an accident. That's on purpose. So
That's true. That's true.
um,
There's so
anyway,
many people though that benefit from this. I think it's really hard to it would be hard to change it unless
yes, it's true.
there was a system that came in
Where
that
everybody
replaced
benefits a
it
lot.
without completely destroying the economy along with it. Because
And I totally
that's
get
the
that.
problem right there.
Yeah, Peter Cook addressed a lot of these issues. There was also a congressman, his name was George. He wrote a book to harass our people about the IRS, and he talked about some of these things. And he, I don't know if he was taken out. He was 86, I think he was. This is serious stuff. So
Yeah,
anyway, there are
I
people
wouldn't
who've
want to
thought
be in
about
that
this a
mission.
lot, is what I'm trying to say.
What's that?
But I don't think any of them are in the Senate or the Congress right now.
Well, I hope one day this all comes out if this is the case,
I hope
because
so too. This is important.
I have a million questions if that's the case, and I would be giddy to see it happen.
Yeah,
But I just, like I said, I've had my hopes up before,
yeah.
and I also kind of came from a bit of a background, 20 years of thinking and with evidence that there is nobody doing anything. They are not going to go up against the criminals that be, and it is just survival to the fittest, which made a long time for me to wonder if I want to even get married and have a family.
Yeah. Wow.
But now, after I said, no, I'm doing it anyway, and with God's grace, we will survive and do good. That's when I start finally, just in recent years, start to see some hope that maybe, I believe that Space Force is a very, very good move.
Hmm.
And I've often, I love the military. I wanted to join.
There's good
I didn't
military
love it
and
when I was
bad.
young. I didn't love it when I was young, but when it was late 20s, I did apply for the Army, and they said the FBI said no, and they returned it back and said that that they wouldn't admit me,
Hmm.
and the recruiter was very upset. I was upset, and I would love to know who declined it. That's one thing I want to
Hmm.
know. I want to know
Hmm.
why. So there are little things that I believe that I would like to know. That information that I just don't know. I kind of got used to saying, "Well, I'll just wait till I die and I go to heaven, and hopefully I understand things then." But if it could happen so that I could have some answers to some of my
Hmm.
questions before then, that would be wonderful. That would be
I
wonderful.
hope you do.
Like I said, I have hopes. I believe Space Force is a very powerful and effective branch of the military, and I hope that they do some great stuff. I've been
Yeah.
watching that ever since its origin, and I think it's fascinating. As far as
I
the powers that be, I think they're pretty darn powerful, though. So I
Yeah, I
don't know.
think so too. I have just one closing thought
Please,
that's kind
yes,
of echoing what you just said, and
yeah.
that is, you know, I got married in 1989, and I
Hmm.
kind of tabled a lot of this stuff at that point in time. I remember distributing stuff. We went to the state fair and distributed stuff, and then it had some small impact, but mostly most people just didn't care. And I even gave a few lectures and stuff like that. But once I got married, I kind of let all that go, and that's a long time ago. And
Hmm.
then around 2016, for various reasons, I'd always kind of had a hand in. I'd watch Alex Jones. Before him, I watched Bill Cooper, and they were sort of, Alex Jones dances around it, but he never gets to it.
Hmm.
And Bill Cooper was closer, is what I thought. I don't know if you remember him, but
Yes,
anyway, so what I'm
well, I
getting
didn't
at
listen
is,
to it in the day, but I've listened to it,
who is
after he
who
passed
he
away.
is. Yeah,
Oh
no, I
yeah.
knew him back when he was doing it, and of course I knew, Ed Griffin, the creature from Jekyll Island. I knew all
Hmm.
that stuff. I got so much of this material. I got thousands, well, hundreds of books anyway.
Hmm.
But anyway, over the past, I don't know, 8, 10 years at the most, I've been encouraged to see that the number of people who are interested and actually actively pursuing this kind of material is growing. There's no question about it. There's more, and we call it getting awake or whatever.
Hmm.
And my wish is, even so, they're awake to a lot of things, but they're not totally awake to the things that we've been talking about here today.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we really need to get to, because it's the fundamentals of how does money work is super, super important. It's the root of everything. Because once we get control of our money, then we take away all their power, their ability to control the media, their ability to control Hollywood, all the corporations. We take all of that away with one sweep by taking away their biggest tool, which is the power to loan money into existence.